Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, 7 Tips to Save Time, Money, and Your Reputation. I'm Kelsey Misbrenner, editor with Solar Power World. Before we begin, we wanted to let you know about our application widgets at the bottom of your screen. You can move and resize them however you'd like. Slides are available to view at any time via the resource widget. Submit any questions related to today's webinar via the Q&A widget. Our presenters will answer them during our Q&A session at the end of the presentation. We encourage you to tweet with us. Simply sign in through the Twitter box. Today's hashtag is automatically added to your tweets. And finally, if you're watching this on demand, you can still use all the features I went over. Let's get started with today's webinar, 7 Tips to Save Time, Money, and Your Reputation. Today's speakers are Dan Felix and Tom Schoder. Dan is the training manager at IronRidge and has nearly 40 years of experience as an electrical contractor and solar installer. Tom is a marketing manager at CivicSolar with expertise in PV system design and digital marketing. And now I'll turn it over to Dan.
Thank you. And it's been an interesting travel in the electrical trade as well as the solar industry. Saying 40 years, that's scary. 40 years in the electrical trade, but truly about 28 years in the solar industry. So glad to be here and share a few tips on things that you should be thinking about as you're performing your projects out there, and really to be successful not only with the customer, but in your overall work practice. For tip number 1 in our 7 tips that we're going to share with you today, wax the skids a little bit. And, you think about that, you're, what in the heck am I talking about? Kind of interesting as we start thinking about putting our permit package together for a solar project. I really would like to emphasize to try and really have a fully loaded package that you're going to take to the building department. Having all that information, all the detailed information in your permit package, remember that when you call for an inspection and get your inspector out at the job site, he has that whole package with him for review and inspection. And there's a lot of information that you may glaze over and not have as part of your permit package, thinking it's not really that important or needed in the permit package. But truly, every detail that you place in there, you get an inspector out at the job site, and he may be calling you on some specific items. You can very politely, and for all of us that have been out in the field with inspectors, we know that that inspector has the authority. We have to be very respectful with them. But in that, you can very politely share, hey, check the permit package. For this product, it requires this type of work. It might be the grounding to a racking system, grounding to the modules, but it will differ from one manufacturer's product to another. That's one thing that you'll find with IronRidge is that we provide you a very detailed documentation. If you use our design assistant tools in designing your project, on the last page of that design tool, it gives you a balance of materials. But then there's another section called Next Steps, shown here on the right-hand side of our DA, Design Assistant tool. And those next steps, there's things like an install manual that you can go ahead and print out and have part of your permit package. You may think, why would I have an install manual for the inspector or for part of my permit package? And truly, in the IronRidge format, our install manual is a UL-controlled document. It lists all of the proper grounding. And if you get an inspector out at the job site and you've only placed the one land lug on one rail in each row of modules, which is all that's needed with the IronRidge product, and the inspector is saying, no, I want a grounding lug on every rail, you can politely say, no, check your permit package, because with the IronRidge product, we only have to have one land lug on one rail in each row of modules. So simple little things like that you may feel is not important in your permit package, hey, put it in that permit package. Make sure you've got all the information there for the inspector out on the job sites. Tip 2, and great photo here, but Tip 2, basically, we don't want you to Frankenstein your system. Kind of interesting. I see a lot of people out on installs with all my different hands-on training events where they'll want to use a product from another manufacturer to finish off a job or something like that. And what really needs to be understood is that it's like with IronRidge products, we have tested our entire product line together as a system. And that's how we have our UL listing on our product, as an entire system. And we've tested each component working with the other components within that system. Now, if you take another manufacturer's part that might be UL listed, but it's not UL listed as part of our system, it may not ground properly, it may not bond a section of the racking properly, if you're using some other manufacturer's bolt in our package system. So it's really important that you know, if you're going to use a manufacturer's product, that you thoroughly use their product all the way through on that project. Now, at IronRidge, we do list other manufacturers' products as being certified to work with our products. At IronRidge, we don't have a mounting or a structure attachment product for every type of roof system. And what we've done is we've gone ahead and tested with some other manufacturers' products, S5 as an example, or maybe Quick Mount as an example, for utilizing their product with our product in an attachment process. So definitely check our website, because at IronRidge we list a number of different manufacturers that are listed and certified to be used with our product. So if you're going to use another manufacturer's product in another manufacturer's system, make sure that it's certified for that application. Ugly photo here for sure, where, you know, some crazy things can happen if you're not using fully listed products as a system. You get into different bonding and groundings and different materials. You get, say, stainless steel and having it connected with something that's galvanized. If you look at this chart, those are two opposite metals, basically, one being a cathode, one being an anode. And basically, if you have a ground fault and it's traveling through that different metals, there's something that comes up called electrolysis, and it will eat away at the material of each product, basically. You not only lose the grounding connection if corrosion becomes a big factor, as shown in some of these pictures, but some really dramatic things can happen. You can cause a bad connection at an electrical connection point, possibly. And what happens with an electrical connection that starts to go bad is that it causes resistance. And as more current is placed to it, that causes more resistance, that causes heat. The heat builds up, which causes more resistance, and it becomes a vicious cycle that can eventually develop enough heat to actually start a fire. So it's important that, again, that you're using products and manufacturers' products that are listed for working with each other and being connected as a system, and that you're not mixing other manufacturers' products and developing some type of, you know, terrible issue out on the job site. I see something else all the time out on job sites, and that's where installers will take wood blocks or items like that to support conduit runs. Truly, you guys have it made in today's world. Back when I first started in solar, there was very little product to utilize, and we were kind of, I hate to say the word Mickey Mousing stuff, but we did what we could with the products that were available to us at that time. What you need to really understand and look at in the overall solar industry is all the different products that are available to you. If you have to run a conduit across a roof system, at IronRidge, we do have a conduit mount. It's made for pitched roof for asphalt comp shingle with a flashing. But, you know, don't just make some crazy wooden blocks. I see guys take wooden blocks and then they'll put some mastic on the roof and then stick the block into that mastic and then put their conduit across the top of it and put a strap on it. You know, a couple of years down the road, with the expansion and contraction through thermal changes, those conduits do move a little bit. they'll go ahead and pull those blocks loose from the roof, from that mastic, and now you've got a loose assembly floating around on that roof that just can cause problems with conduit separating down the road. Remember, we're building these systems to last 20, 30 years, even longer, and we want to do a good job to where it's going to last that time period. So we're on to tip number 3, and kind of an interesting photo here. If I'm packing my lunchbox, I want to pack it to where things are going to stay cool. Things that I want to keep dry will stay dry even if the ice melts in my lunchbox. But it comes just as important on your truck as you're loading up your truck to go to the job site. Kind of an ugly photo here. Would you like to work out of this truck? Or would you like to work out of this truck? Definitely try to keep your vehicle or a truck or a van, whatever you're utilizing, organized. Kind of interesting also, and I didn't really learn this for myself until I got into doing very large utility scale projects. In my experience, I started off doing battery-based systems for off-grid customers because grid tie wasn't even available yet. Grid tie became available. I started doing residential grid-tied systems. We started doing commercial systems. But once I got into doing utility scale size of projects is when I started really understanding about kind of packing things right. You know, out on a job site where you've got a pretty large project, you'll find that if you have to move material more than once or twice, you're just costing yourself labor and time. So if you can keep the job site organized or even the work truck, think about when you're loading the work truck in the morning and heading out to the job site. If I'm packing something into my truck first thing in the morning that maybe I, don't need until the end of the day and I'm packing that in the truck last, I got to take it out of the truck. I've got to set it down someplace out of the way. And then to get down to material that's in the truck that I'm going to use immediately. So when you think about it and you're loading up that truck to go to the job site, try and organize the package that you're loading into the truck to where what you're going to use first, you'll load last on the truck. What you're going to use last on the job site, go ahead and load up first into the truck. So, and I know that sometimes is difficult. Some guys are loading up a whole pallet of modules, and you're loading that into the back of a service van or something like that. You might try and put that pallet of modules into the van first, and then load the materials that you're going to use first on the job site in front of that pallet of modules. So just be thinking about that. Just remember that if you're moving it more than once at the job site, you just wasted time and costing you money. So if you can load it properly, it's going to save you time out on the job site, which is just going to put more dollars in your pocket. So the next tip is going to go into safety, and I'm going to let Tom take over for the safety notes.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Just wanted to talk a little bit here today about safety on the job site. And, obviously Dan has many more years of experience in this field than I do. It was a pleasure working alongside Dan and putting together this webinar and learning from him. And, ultimately I've gone through some OSHA certification myself. But my hope today is that a lot of this is review for the contractors listening in here today, and that a lot of these safety tips are really just part of your everyday workflow on the job site. And if not, if you learn something new, then great. And then, this is really important stuff to start implementing to ensure the safety of your crew and team members out on the site. Because really, on-site job safety should be the #1 priority for contractors. So first off here, you might think your team is as graceful as these trapeze artists up on the roof when performing your installation, but really the message here is don't fly without a net. Do not install a solar system without fall protection. really the number one most important safety aspect of a solar installation is ensuring your entire team up on the roof has adequate fall protection. And it's really about having that safety focused to protect the greatest asset in your business, which is your people. And at the end of the day, lack safety when it comes to fall protection could be one of the most expensive mistakes you as a business owner could potentially make. And so, it's all about doing it the right way and really not overlooking this key step in your solar installations. So when it comes to safety first and fall protection, it's and kind of talking to Dan and learning more about this, it's really about having three main goals with fall protection. It's having the right gear, the right information, and the right mindset. So ensuring that you have all of the right gear on site packed properly, like Dan mentioned. When it comes to the right information, it's ensuring that all of your team members are well informed on how to use all of the fall protection equipment, and ensuring that everyone is willing to speak up if somebody is not wearing something correctly or has a few questions, taking the time to go over all of the equipment standards with your entire team before really starting the job once again. And then having the right mindset. So just that open communication with the team, making sure if somebody's not sure about something, they can feel comfortable asking about that fall protection. Additionally, super important to have a hard hat on the site, as well as proper attachment to the structure, as you can see here in the bottom right-hand corner. And then beyond kind of fall protection being the most important, it's also very important to make sure that you have proper gloves, ear protection, and eye protection. I was talking to Dan, and he was telling me in working on some of these roofs for a long time, dealing with white TPO roofs over years, he said one of his major regrets was early on in his installation career was not wearing sunglasses all the time on these sites. You think about that sunlight coming down from not only above, but then reflecting back off that white TPO, and it takes a beating. So make sure that your team is well prepared with adequate eyewear and have those sunglasses in hand. Another tip here is just working the angles when it comes to safety. So, this might be a review for a lot of people, but extension ladders should be used at a 4-to-1 pitch. So for every 4 feet in height, the bottom of the ladder should be 1 foot away from the structure. This building here is 20 feet tall, and the bottom of the ladder should be 5 feet away from the building. And also making sure that top of the ladder extends 3 feet beyond the roof line. So that way when you're standing on the top rung, you still have a handhold. And lastly, don't forget to tie off that ladder as well. And this is a pretty interesting picture here. But don't be a dummy on the site. If you're on the job site and you don't have the right ladder or other equipment, don't think you can just save time and get something done quickly with a tool that maybe wasn't meant for what it's going to be used for. Just don't do something dumb, and make sure you go back to the warehouse, get the equipment you need, and come back and do it the right way. Because the last thing you want is the homeowner to walk out of their door and see you doing something like this. It just doesn't bode well for the image of your business. So take the time to get the right tools or equipment to the job site. Do it safe and right. Another safety tip, very important as well, is hydration, and really making sure that the tips behind hydration are kind of built into how you kind of go through your workflow on the job site. So making sure you have ample water for your entire crew, really 2 to 4 cups of water per person per hour. Making sure you have a spot off the roof that has some shade for cover when people need it, and making sure people know about it. And really kind of having an emergency plan too. If somebody goes down with one of the following symptoms here, dizziness, headache, no sweating, rapid heartbeat, vomiting from the heat, making sure you have a plan, some cold towels on site, and really kind of having that action plan ready to go in case somebody does experience these warning sign symptoms. And just lastly, when it comes to these safety tips, I know Dan mentioned he's been installing mostly in Southern California and the Southwest in general, where humidity isn't as big a factor. But if you're in the South, the Midwest, even in the Northeast for these summers, the humidity can be pretty brutal and really amps up the heat index. So take that into consideration when you're looking at the weather for the week, planning out your installations. Also take a look at the humidity index and make sure that your team is aware of what the humidity is going to be and you come prepared with ample supplies. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Dan here for tip number 5.
Thanks, Tom. A couple of things on safety that I'll note, Tom, also, and that's ear protection. Kind of interesting being in the solar industry and basically in the construction industry most of my life. Like you said earlier, Tom, I hated wearing anything on my face, so I didn't wear sunglasses very often. And I didn't like items in my ear, so I didn't wear ear or noise protection when I was using a lot of loud tools. Now, I'm getting kind of up in my senior years, and yeah, my hearing is pretty bad now, and my eyesight has gotten pretty bad. So, a lot of these things, as we're really much younger in life, we don't, put a huge value on them, or, we think we're going to have that vision and that hearing our entire life. Hey, not if you abuse it. So, take advantage of the safety equipment, and there's some great tips there, Tom. So, tip 5. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. As you're doing things on the job site, don't take shortcuts because it'll just cost you in the end. That fall protection that Tom talked about, I can't count how many times that I go out on these hands-on trainings, and the guys are good. They're putting in their fall protection. When you do this, you're putting multiple screws into a rafter to attach your rope for a good secure connection to the structure for that fall protection. But what I see at the end of the job, in many cases, the guys go ahead, they remove the screws, they go ahead and remove the fall protection, and then they might just throw a little sealant in the holes and walk away from it. But truly, when you look at International Building Code, it states that whenever you're putting a penetration through the waterproof membrane of a structure, that you need to place a flashing to protect those penetrations. So I would advise you to, definitely you get done with your fall protection, you're done at the job, last man off the roof, go ahead, remove that fall protection attachment to the structure, but then have some sheet aluminum. You might even use up a flashing possibly from the product that you've been using. A $7 or $8 flashing is cheap insurance to protect those holes. So remove the screws, go ahead, put some sealant into those holes just like you normally would, but then go ahead, slip a piece of flashing material under the Corsa shingles where you had that attachment to the structure and flash those holes, the penetrations that you've penetrated through the waterproof membrane of that structure. One leak in a customer's roof can be very costly. There's been a lot of studies done recently with insurance claims on water leaks dealing with solar. And typically what happens is a water leak is not found maybe for the first 2 or 3 years. That leak develops and becomes worse after a little time, few seasons of winter rains. And then eventually that leak becomes so severe that it starts dripping water on the sheetrock ceiling within the structure. Someone finally sees a stain in that ceiling, and they get up in the attic, see what's going on, and they find that, there's a leak from the solar system, or maybe from the attachment of the fall protection from the workers when they were at the job site. In any event, maybe it's been 4 or 5 years after the system was installed that the leak is found, but in that period of time, there's been a lot of rot and mildew and decay to the lumber. And now to repair that properly, the whole roof has to be torn off. Some new framing members have to be installed. The roof has to be replaced. The solar system has to be replaced. It becomes very, very expensive. So don't end up being the bad guy 5 years down the road and someone saying terrible things about the work you did because of a leak that was developed in that ceiling. You want your customers to give you great rapports for future projects. Something else that I see out on the job site a lot, and that's where installers like using just what I call a bell box. A lot of people know it as a NEMA 3 rated weatherproof box. A lot of people think, oh, it's rated as being weatherproof, so I'm going to use it. Well, you really need to look at the listings on these products. Now, a standard bell box, which I see installers all the time using out on solar projects, they're mounting this in a flat position with the face of the cover in an upward fashion. The problem, if you look at the listing on a NEMA 3 bell box, it's not listed as being waterproof in that position. It's only listed for being waterproof in a vertical mounted position. So virtually you've violated the listing of that product by utilizing it in a flat position in a solar array. It's probably only $2 more. Get a NEMA 4 box. Get a box that's rated to be totally waterproof in any position. Using a NEMA 4 box, you're guaranteeing that you're not going to have water getting into your splices and maybe problems with corrosion on the interior part of that box. So something else to think about, and that's don't drip and drive. A lot of us are not driving brand new vehicles out to the job site. And, we might have a slight oil leak in the transmission or the engine of the vehicle that we're bringing to the job site. If you know that you've got a situation with the vehicle that you're driving and you're going to park it on the customer's driveway, have a sheet of cardboard or something to throw underneath the vehicle so you're not staining up the driveway. These sound like really stupid little things, but they're huge to the customer. The customer doesn't want to have oil stains on his nice concrete apron to his driveway. Again, this is just a little item, but it can really, send a bad message to the customer. And, again, we want the customer to represent us for future projects. So don't drip on the customer's driveway. Another item, definitely with residential projects, first thing when you get to the job site, meet the customer, let them know you're there on site, that you're going to start their project. And then the next thing I would ask that customer is, do you have any pets that we should be aware of? Or sometimes you've got workers that are going to go through the customer's house to get to the backyard, or maybe they've got a gate where you're actually entering the backyard to gain access to the roof. And you've got personnel or employees, workers that are going back and forth through that gate area, and the customer's got a couple dogs back there. Or maybe a cat, or that they keep locked in the house, an inside house cat, something like that. Just the number one, if you ask the customer if there's any pets that they should be aware of, the customer's going to appreciate that you've taken the time to, bring that up. And, the other thing that you'll find on some job sites is some customers' dogs are very protective of the owner and of the owner's property. If you might ask the customer, the dog's in the backyard, we're safe to go in and out. Have you ever had any experience with the dog being protective and biting anyone? I did have one bad experience on one job site with one of my employees at one time. He got a nasty dog bite. And the dog was just trying to protect the property because here my employee was a stranger coming into his yard. But, you definitely don't want to have your employees getting bit by dogs. If the customer has animals that have bitten in the past, you might ask that the animals kept inside while you're working on the project that day. But definitely create a pet plan. For most homeowners, the pet is a family member and just as important to them as if it was a son or a daughter of theirs. Respect that for the customer. All right. tip number 6, kind of an interesting photo here, but it all comes down to leaving a clean installation. I can't stress enough how important it is to have that good relationship with the customer. You want the customer, when you're done with the project, to just be really grateful with the overall experience they've had with you coming in and performing your project for them. And if you leave trash around the job site, or, you know, you might sit down and have lunch, make sure you pick up the wrappers. It's not just your lunch items, it's the job site itself and the material that you're unpacking. A lot of these materials could be an inverter or something like that, have got styrofoam that they've packed the inverter in a box with. You'll know in a lot of cases like that, if you're not careful unpacking it, that you'll get little styrofoam beads floating around. Try to minimize that as much as possible. If you do spread a bunch of styrofoam or something around, pick it up immediately so the wind doesn't pick it up and blow it around. Last thing you want is the solar customer's neighbor to be complaining that he's got trash from the install that the workers did in his next door neighbor's yard. So again, it's just, a lot of it is common sense, I call it, but man, having a clean installation is critical for the customer's experience. So something else that I find pretty interesting on roofs all the time, and I get this experience from working with IronRidge as their training manager. I go out and do what I call hot events, hands-on training events. On a lot of these events, you know, I teach the installers that they should do an array layout on the roof. And the first thing they'll pull out of their tool bags most of the time is a wax base lumber crayon. And that's what they typically will mark out on the roof for the array area as they start planning where their attachments for the array and everything's going to be. They'll lay out the actual module corners of the array. And what happens with these wax base type lumber crayons is they melt. And you'll see here in this photo onto the right-hand side, this happens to be a job that I was just at a couple weeks ago in Bakersfield, California. And the installers immediately grabbed these yellow wax base lumber crayons and started marking out the array. And within about 15, 20 minutes, because of the heat of the day, we were actually working on a day that it was 105. But you can see in that photo how the wax-based lumber crayon melted into the roof material and stained the roof. Now, what happens with the wax-based lumber crayon is it does melt on that hot roof. It kind of spreads out across the roofing material as it melts, and it's going to leave a permanent mark on that roof that's never going to go away. So what I found, what works best for me when I was running crews and running my own projects, was using chalk, street chalk. My kids had street chalk that they used all the time marking up my driveway, but I grabbed some of that one day and started marking out my arrays with the chalk. Now with street chalk, what happens, yeah, you've got to mark temporarily on the roof for getting your project built the way you want to be able to define where things are going. But the first wet rain that the customer has, that chalk rinses right off the roof and is gone virtually. You can even take, some guys will try to clean off a roof a little bit with a blower at the end of the job, just making sure that any debris or any packaging is blown away and is out from underneath the array area. And even a blower will actually remove most of the chalk that you left on that roof. But definitely the first rain will wash it away. So just as another tip, use those lumber crayons for marking lumber on a job site someplace, but don't be marking the customer's roof. Use just some street chalk to go ahead and mark out your array area. And just leave a really clean installation. You know, spend that extra 10, 15 minutes at the very end of the job. I know at the end of the job you want to pack up and get out of there and go home, but take that extra 5, 10 minutes and double check for any packaging that may have blown into some landscaping in the project or something that the customer is going to find maybe a month later when he's doing some yard work or something. Just make sure you got it all picked up. Your project is your calling card, basically. Neighbors from that customer are going to drive by, see the solar array on the customer's roof, and if it's a really clean project and you've left everything nice and neat and clean, hey, you're going to get referrals for more projects down the road. I can't express enough what I found in my own business habits, and that is that your customer is your best referral for your next job. And, you know, I never had to advertise for work because my customers did my advertising for me, because I was critical about having a clean site, having a clean project, and leaving the customer totally satisfied when we were done with a project. Definitely, if the customer comes home, he sees your lunch trash sitting around, he's going to be looking at his garbage pickup cans and going, why didn't the workers just take a few minutes out and just, you know, throw their garbage in my trash cans? They're right here. And you don't want to leave that customer with that bad experience. All right, tip 7. Tom, are you going to take this one?
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks, Dan. And, you know, you had some great points kind of alluding to the importance of the customer kind of acting as your own advertising with installations. And really tip number 7 here, our final tip, is all about leveraging the success of your installations with customers to hopefully grow future clients and create win-win scenarios for your solar installation business. So in leveraging your success, you know, sometimes it can be a little challenging to ask for referrals. Sometimes people feel a little awkward about it. But really, you know, rather than seeing this as a burden where you might kind of feel almost desperate or pushy asking the customer, I would encourage you to be direct and ask your clients or customers through an email, online, or in person, or even at the bottom of your invoices with a message like this on the screen. Ask them for their candid feedback. And, you know, it's really not pushy or awkward if you feel you've earned it by going above and beyond with your installations. So, you know, leveraging that success is all about reaching out to the customer, getting their candid feedback when you feel like you've performed a great installation. And then when they send a new client your way, be sure to thank them with a handwritten letter whenever you can as well. Another aspect to this is really working the network. So a way to tap a customer's referral network in kind of a casual fashion that Dan and members of the IronRidge team were telling me about is that when you're prepping for the customer and prepping for the day of the install, ask them if they have any neighborhood email groups or community bulletin boards that they know about. And also be sure that they may want to contact their neighbors and let them know ahead of time that your crew is going to be there so that they're not alarmed. But then after the install, when everything has gone great, and you can be sure to ask if they'd be willing to share your contact info to some of those neighborhood email groups or those community bulletin boards in case anyone else is looking into solar. So just a reminder that, you know, when you're going to the customer's house, ask them a little bit about their network in the community, and then once the installation is done, just a quick follow-up question, you know, seeing if anyone else would be interested in the install as well. And, you know, studies have shown people can really only maintain about 100 to 120 quality relationships, but you think about each one of your customers having that kind of built-in network and, you know, an opportunity to spread the word about the solar industry and their satisfaction with your work on the job site. Another area of this kind of leveraging success of the installation is to really watch for the blind spots online as well these days. I would say today, you know, not only in solar, but really in any kind of home improvement trade, it's best to assume that every customer is going to review their experience with you on Yelp or some other social media platform. So every month or so, every quarter, I would do a quick search to see if there are any reviews or posts about your company lurking out there. It could just be the case where there's one negative review, for example, on Angie's List. And you'd be surprised at kind of what that can do to the perception of a customer when looking online at your business. If somebody does have a negative comment, fine, but don't try and resolve it on the platform. I would take it offline, post a neutral comment, something like, "We're sorry to hear your experience wasn't great. We'll reach out directly to resolve this." And it can really be possible to kind of nip those negative reviews in the bud and continue growing your business. And I think, as always, if you can tell something is potentially going sideways with a customer, it's always better to talk things out face-to-face and personally. Bring up those potential issues before a customer has an opportunity to vent something out on the internet. So with that, I just wanted to thank both Solar Power World and IronRidge for taking the time to put together this webinar. That was the end of tip number 7, and really just kind of wanted to bring up CivicSolar's appreciation for IronRidge as a partner of ours. We were founded in 2009, and IronRidge has really been a pillar of our racking business since, and been a pleasure to work with them. And so I would encourage the installers out there to reach out to your CivicSolar account manager for any product questions with IronRidge, as well as, the IronRidge team is always there to help as well. And your account manager can easily create these IronRidge bill of materials for you. And if you ever want to do that yourself as well, we have our product list feature, so you can easily take that final bill of materials, add it to a custom product list on our website, and we will reliably fulfill that IronRidge equipment to your job site, and we look forward to helping you on more installations. So with that, thank you to everyone who tuned in here today. Feel free to check out the CivicSolar website as well. We've got plenty of featured projects with IronRidge equipment, so you can get a nice visual of what some of these projects look like at the final stages. And Dan, if you have any final words, go ahead, and then we can dive into some live questions as well.
Oh, thank you, Tom. It's goes hand in hand. IronRidge, I'm sure we want to thank CivicSolar for being a great distribution partner and working with us. One thing you'll find with IronRidge, and it's one thing as an installing contractor for years, if you're installing with some racking manufacturer or modules or inverter and you have issues or questions out of the job site, you want to be able to call someone and get an answer right away so that you can keep going with your work. And it's one thing at IronRidge that we really strive is to provide that help and support whenever we're needed. We have our 800 number at IronRidge for customer service. That's at 1-800-227-9523. I'll repeat that again. That's IronRidge customer service, 1-800-227-9523. They're available from 7 in the morning until 5 in the evening Pacific time. And the customer service group can help you with designing a project on our design tools. Maybe you've got a question with a UL listing on something, whatever it might be. You'll find that IronRidge really strives to support the customers, not only the end customer, but our distribution partners as well. So, thank you very much, Tom, and thanks for CivicSolar.
All right. So now we're going to open up the floor for some questions. If you have any questions, you can submit them in the Q&A widget. Maybe we can start off. Oh, okay, we got a couple here. Okay, the first question I'm seeing here is IronRidge working on a railless option?
Very interesting question. We've actually been working on our railless solution for probably close to 4 years. It's one thing you'll find with IronRidge is that we don't just develop something kind of, halfway and throw it out to the public to use. We will just, it's unbelievable. Actually, I didn't understand it until I came to work at IronRidge as their training manager. I always liked the quality I found on the product, but it wasn't until I came to work at IronRidge that man, it's unbelievable everything IronRidge performs with testing and everything before we launch something to the public. So now that I shared that we've been working on a railless solution for about 4 years, we are sharing a product with customers that want to try to utilize it called FX. And the FX product line is a railless solution that we do have. It is available, but we're not just launching it openly to the public. If someone is interested in utilizing our railless product, you need to contact CivicSolar. They can align you with one of our sales reps at IronRidge. And in that, right now what we're doing with the railless product is kind of an interesting world, the railless world. There's a different mindset that you have to have in your design and also on installation. So from doing a standard rail product. And in that, we want you to be successful with our railless product. So what we do is we do an install training with the installers of a company. And we also work with the designers of the company to teach them how to use the product and design properly. You'll be designing modules in a landscape format rather than a portrait format when you go to railless. Our railless product can be mounted in portrait or landscape, but in general, you'll want to be using a landscape format to minimize the number of attachments to a structure. So yes, we do have a railless product. We're just not openly launching it to the public. We want to make sure that the customers that want to use a railless product are totally trained on how to utilize it successfully. And we're taking the time to do that. So again, if you're interested in a railless product from IronRidge, we do have it available. It's called FX. Contact CivicSolar, and then they'll align you with the sales rep from IronRidge for your territory. And from that, then we'll align with providing the training to go along with that product as you're utilizing it for your first couple of times.
All right. Audience members, you can continue to submit questions in the Q&A widget whenever you'd like. Here's another question. What are the best resources out there for job site training?
Tom's not grabbing it, so I guess this is directed to me. This is Dan again.
Go for it, Dan.
I truly don't know what other manufacturers are doing. At IronRidge, as the training manager, if you have a company that is thinking of maybe utilizing our product and you haven't used our product in the past, again, you would want to align yourself with the sales rep from IronRidge. If you don't know who the sales rep from IronRidge is for your territory, you can always call CivicSolar, or you can go ahead and call the customer service 800 number I shared with you earlier. They'll align you with the sales rep from IronRidge in your territory. And then basically the sales rep will submit to me a request for training, and I go out almost every week. I'm doing a hands-on training with some crew someplace across the country. I travel everywhere from Puerto Rico to Hawaii providing hands-on training. I provide training at multiple different levels. I get requests sometimes for just a classroom training, and I'll go out and provide that, or a hands-on training. The hands-on training, I actually come to the job site, meet with your installers. I perform what I call a tailgate meeting, where I'll bring samples of the product to where the installers can actually interact with that product at a tailgate of a vehicle before they actually get up on the roof trying to install it. I go through all the technical aspects of proper torque for different attachments, all the different details of each product that we have in our product lineup as a system for pitched roof or for flat roof or for ground mount. So at IronRidge, we provide that hands-on training. If you want to have someone from IronRidge come out and provide that training, there's myself as the training manager, but we also have people in the products group, Thomas, Mitch. Between the three of us, one of us will come out and do some training with your crew if you'd like, and be glad to do that for you and provide those services.
All right, the next question is, does IronRidge have metal roof attachments?
Great question. So, like I talked about earlier in the presentation, there are some product items that are available from other manufacturers out in the industry to work with our products. And in some cases, IronRidge feels it's not worth us developing our own product because there's already a product out there that is suited for that need that works very well, and we don't see any room for improvement in that product. So in those cases, then we'll go ahead and certify that product working with our product. So for metal roofs, as an example, there's a company called S5. Now, S5 makes great attachments for corrugated metal roofs, for standing seam metal roofs, just about any type of metal roof system. S5 has an attachment that works very well, and we don't see really room for much improvement to what they have available. So we've taken the time to get samples of their products. We do very thorough testing of our product working with their product. We look at structural strength of their product and what the structural needs are of that attachment, and that it's going to work with our engineering. Once we've reviewed all that, and then we'll go to UL and actually test with their products, with our products, and we'll totally certify a manufacturer's product working with our product. So for the metal roofs, I would definitely suggest you looking at S5 as the attachment to the structure, and then you'll be able to utilize the S5 materials to attach our rails to the S5 product. You get into tile roofs or other type of roof systems, we recommend a lot of quick mount products to be worked and used with our products. And we have certification on our website for these other manufacturers. We have EcoFasten, S5, and Quick Mount listed on our website as far as products of theirs that are certified to work with our products.
All right. This question is kind of specific, so it might be better offline, but I'll let you decide that. This person says, I have a customer that's wanting us to put solar on their fiberglass enclosed trailer. I'm planning on using the 1000 rails. How would you suggest attaching L-foot to trailer roof?
Yeah, that's a tough one sometimes. I would really contact the trailer manufacturer if at all possible. You need to find out the structural integrity of the roof system of that manufactured, mobile unit. The mobile homes and stuff like that have very small framing members built within them, and you really need to check the structural strength of how you might attach to that structure. There's a lot of those mobile homes or travel trailers or things like that have a TPO membrane sometimes, or a rubber membrane as the waterproofing membrane on the roof system. There are deck mount products that are available. There's products from, I'm trying to think of the different manufacturers. There's Anchor products. There's OMG is another one. It could be possibly that the best fit would be a product of that type that is deck mount. There is a plywood sheeting generally on most of those manufactured homes like that. But again, I would highly recommend that you check with the manufacturer of that home, whether it's a travel trailer, whether it's a modular home, something like that, and number one, you want to look at the structural strength of that attachment. Now, on our design tool at IronRidge, if you design the number of modules or, on something like that, it may only be one row of modules, something like that. But when you run our design tool and design the array layout, we give you all the structural strength that needs to be placed in each attachment. We give you all the weight details. We give you what's called reaction forces, the uplift forces and the downward forces. And once you've designed the project on our design tool, then you'll have all those reaction forces. You can share that engineering information with the structural engineer or the manufactured home or something like that, and let them know, hey, I'm going to be putting 30 pounds at each one of these attachment weights. Can the structure handle that amount of weight? During a wind event, I could have X number of pounds of wind uplift. Will your structure handle that type of uplift forces? So number one, I would design the project on our design tool at IronRidge and go ahead and utilize those reaction forces, the engineering notes that are in that design, then to share with the manufactured home or a trailer manufacturer or something like that. Once you've defined that the structure can handle those reaction forces, then start looking at what product you might use for that attachment. Like I said, there's anchor products or OMG or a couple deck mount products that might work well with something like you noted.
All right. If anyone else has questions for Dan and Tom, they can reach out to them separately, but that's all the time we have today for questions. I'd like to thank Dan and Tom for being here again, and CivicSolar for sponsoring today's webinar. And thank you to everyone in our audience for participating. I hope you enjoyed our presentation, and we invite you to join us for more Solar Power World webinars. Thanks, everyone.